You can talk about every day being a gift and stopping to smell the roses, but regular life's got a way of picking away at it. Your house, the shit you own, it drags you down. Your kids, what they want. One bad idea after another. Just trying to work a cell phone menu is enough to make you scream.
Yeah, these goddamn cell phones, they just keep making them and I keep breaking them. Welcome, my friends, to Cut to Black, a Sopranos Sit-Down. My name is Jim Scampoli. I've seen every episode of The Sopranos.
My name's Jacob Burrows, and I've seen 71 episodes of The Sopranos, and I'm glad that Tony never had to deal with apps. Not talking about appetizers, I'm talking about the ones on your phone. When that scene happened, I was like, cell phone menus? What? And then I remembered. And yeah, it was probably worse than apps, but like, I imagine a modern day The Sopranos would have Tony like doing Candy Crush or whatever to relax, and that would have been great too. So, you win some, lose some, but either way, here we are, episode 71, Live Free or Die. Who put this together, Jim?
This one was written by not only David Chase and Terrence Winter, but also Robin Green and Mitchell Burgess. This is like the all-stars of The Sopranos all together, the Avengers, joined together on one episode, directed by Tim Van Patten, yet another Sopranos mainstay. I am very sad to learn that this is actually the last episode that Robin Green and Mitchell Burgess are involved in. Apparently, they left. They'd been in it since the first season. They left to produce a new project for HBO, which never took shape. So,
yeah,
cool.
That's depressing, isn't it? Although, yeah, to be fair, we're coming up on the home stretch. Like, they did their part. Yeah. They did episodes into the final season here. So, well, season 6, it's for me. I'm still sort of a bit in the middle on whether there's 2 seasons here or not. I'll watch them first, and then you'll get my call. I'm sure that will be the most riveting thing to learn from me, having watched the whole series, is do I consider them 2 separate seasons or not? But for now, well done, Robin and Mitchell. Sorry to see you go.
Yeah, they're involved in some great episodes up to this point. Whitecaps specifically written by. But I mean, even going back to Boca, remember the one with Uncle June going down on his mistress there.
Oh, so, yeah, that's a great one.
I guess that kind of ties in with where we're at here, Live Free, with the episode Live Free or Die. This episode opens with Tony. Every day is a gift. So he's out there trying to enjoy that gift. He's trying to just enjoy the day. But we're kind of seeing maybe the classic Tony creep in a little bit, because that's one of the reasons why, outside of the cell phone menu line, I like how he kind of highlights in that quote there, life starts chipping away at your ideals, I guess. Like, you can tell yourself, hey, it's a brand new day, I'm going to change my life. But then there's still you there. And are you going to let something like your air conditioner making a little rattling noise kind of get to you when you're trying to read your yachting magazine or whatever he's reading at the time?
It is so great. It is so great that he's reading a yachting magazine, because it's in contrast to a couple episodes ago when he goes outside, sits there, looks up at the trees, like really is in the moment. And now later in the episode, he's complaining about the things you own weighing you down. And yet it's a yachting magazine that you would only own or get delivered if you were interested in, I don't know, buying an even bigger boat. And I think he says in this episode, like, I might not even have the boat if not for Vito.
Yeah.
But like, remember, Tony, that's a negative now. You had this Buddhist approach with Melfi, but I guess not so much, and that's why the rattling is bothering you.
Well, and also, if we could point out, and I know this has been pointed out many times by other people, probably discussing The Sopranos, but what was Kevin Finnerty's thing, Jacob? Remember when the monks were mad at him for his faulty heating system, Jacob? What is Tony dealing with here?
Nah. Sorry, no. I thought it was going to be something about he sold yachts. Like, I didn't remember that at all. But yeah, okay. Was that in the book? Did you say that?
It's in the book, and someone else had mentioned it too, and I was like, I did the same thing you did. I just kind of shook my head. Like, it's a fun little connection to make, but I don't know. Do you really think that they were like tying that together? I mean, I guess it's possible, right?
No, I don't think so. um, well, yes. So we actually wanted to mention just before we moved on from it because I was like, I'll do this at the end of the episode, but I'll forget about our dear writers, Mitchell Burgess and Robin Green. The project with HBO may not have worked out, but they did create the TV show Blue Bloods, which I've never watched, but there are 10 seasons of it. It started in
Yeah.
2010 and it's still going. And well done, guys, I guess. I also didn't know that Robin Green was a quote unquote Gal Friday for editor in chief Stan Lee at Marvel Comics. All sorts of fun
Well,
facts.
it's weird that you don't know that because I've mentioned that a few times at the start of this very show when
Huh.
we gone over.
Look, Jim, I
Yeah.
regularly forget the names of main cast members of The Sopranos. So,
Yeah, damn,
there
that
you
show
go.
has 197 episodes at this point. So yeah, good for them. I doubt
Yeah.
it's a good show, but whatever. That's just because on CBS.
Yeah, but they're the creators, though. I mean, they might. Well, we'll never know.
Yeah.
So we have Vito hanging out with his Gumar and going like, "Is that all you ever think about sex?" Because he has a Gumar, apparently for appearances, and this side house, I guess, that people know about but don't really know about, or maybe it's her house that he put her up in. I'm not sure.
Yeah, it's really he's not. I mean, he's lambing it, but he's in an easy to find place. Like it's not very smart because people at least know about this Guma. And I mean, as we see later in the episode, at least they know to check there. So come on, my dude, you had the right idea. Just go to a nondescript motel somewhere. Keep that up.
Yeah, I think he was laying low, I guess, hoping that the whole thing would blow over. So, no pun intended. So yeah, well, I guess he was hoping that if no one got, if it didn't get back to the Sopranos, he could just waddle back into, with a fat stack of cash, and it would be like nothing ever happened.
Yeah, that's true. I guess there was always the potential. Like it was like more than likely word's going to get out, but there was the potential that maybe it would just get squashed somehow. So I guess
Yeah.
I could see maybe he's kind of holding on to that.
Yeah, even though he's obviously wrong, and word tends to spread. So Tony is at Satrielli's, and Christopher comes up and talks in some thinly veiled language about how Christopher's got to hook up these guys coming over from Italy with some scissors to do a barber job on this guy. So I guess the deal with taking out Rusty's still going on ahead, even though Johnny Sack is our estimation of him is plummeted.
Yeah.
Despite
Yep.
that.
And Christopher he changes his tone a bit here where he's like, yeah, this is actually a great idea, Tony, shielding us, keep giving us extra protection. And don't we see Muscles here as well?
Muscles Marinara shows up and Tony kind of apologizes for his fucking temper. And the guy is like, it's kind of adorable. He's like, I don't remember slamming no fridge door, but like, if you said it or whatever, like he's kind of like, he's obviously a dumb guy from just the short scenes we had with him earlier. But yeah, he's kind of like, oh, my dad said, and everyone said, I never should have raised my hand to you. I'm really sorry. And Tony, like he's wont to do, just gives him some cash and pats him on the head and sends him on his way.
But he even does a thing like where he kind of, not begrudgingly, but he's like, yeah, I accept your apology. Even though Tony knows completely it was all fabricated, but he's still kind of like, yeah, just don't let it happen again. Like it starts out as a Tony apology, but then it turns into, yeah, like Tony forgiving him for what he did.
He goes like, as long as you realize, and actually wags his finger at him. Yeah.
So then what do we have here? Oh, Chris is at AA. All right. So, and Chris can't take some of these stories. Like he doesn't want to listen to the, even though he's at AA, he's working the program. They have to step outside and then he hears, he gets word on Vito from someone they run into here at the AA meeting.
Oh yeah. He's not up for this nonsense. They head outside for a smoke. Him and his sponsor and some guy who's I don't know. I never know where things are happening and whose crew is connected to who. But this guy, I think his name is Sal. Or maybe the guy who saw Vito was named Sal. But anyway, words gets to him, and Christopher can't fucking wait. He's like running. This is like worse than when someone's life is on the line. I've never seen him run before. He's like running into the Bing to tell everyone about what he's seen.
Yes, yeah. Well, yeah, the guy who saw Vito is Sal, and it's this guy's cousin or something like that. And it's interesting how gleeful Christopher is on this. When Christopher was the victim of the other side of this, of the gossipy like bullshit you have to deal with, when the whole thing with Adriana happened, and he was, even had his little line about, it doesn't matter whether it happened or not. People believe it happened, but he's, it's always nice to be on this other side of it where you get to pile on with everyone else,
Yeah, and Tony's tone is a bit different because they come in like, you're never going to believe this. And Christopher's sponsor's there for some reason, and he's really excited to tell Tony too. Says he's an ass muncher, I believe. And but Christopher kind of tones it down a little bit when he goes like, he adds an allegedly, and such, because Tony's like, what? No, like Vito's my top earner. I don't want to hear this shit.
Yeah, exactly. And yeah, they mention the motorcycle outfit and everything. They kind of get into some of the detail. Yeah. People don't really know what to believe yet. Paulie's pretty upset. Paulie doesn't want to hear about this.
Yeah, fucking slander if you ask him. And yeah, Tony says, let's take this in the back. And the sponsor's like, yeah, that's what Vito did. And Tony's like, you can go.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, it's interesting. Sorry to cut you off, but like, because I remember at the time when they kind of spent as you can even see what this episode ends, like this is still a lingering thread. And at the time, just knowing that we're kind of getting into the end of the Sopranos, I remember I was like, what the fuck? Why are we spending so much time on this? But seeing it now, it's such an interesting turn and such a classic, I guess, Sopranos thing to do, to kind of give you something you don't necessarily know you want to see. And especially being able to, like, obviously you could tackle gay issues and masculinity, and especially in this type of environment now, but to have characters that are pretty openly homophobic, like in the worst way, but also have them still be the characters you like. It's an interesting thing to do that I don't know if you'd necessarily be able to do now. Like, you'd have to make them more villainous, I feel. And again, we're talking about people that are murderers and like they do terrible things as well. But like, obviously it gets a little bit touchier because you're dealing with just portrayal in media, and there's like just different social issues around it rather than just dealing with murderers. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And I think one of the interesting bits is that, jumping ahead, when Tony's with Melfi, she wants his opinion of the whole gay thing, and Tony's like, I think, it's disgusting, I hate it. But then talking more about it, he's like, honestly, he doesn't care. He obviously doesn't care. And so this homophobia that he's exhibiting, it's kind of like, you have to do that because that's the done thing. And obviously this all ties in a lot with what happened in the previous episode. It makes sense to have this in sequence where Johnny Sacks, a lot of his reputation was lost there, as he started crying at his daughter's wedding for being taken away to probably go in the clink for life. So if that's bad, then this is obviously much worse. And just the way that they all have different inputs on it, where like Christopher seems like really gung-ho about like, I want to kill this guy, and Paulie eventually turns to that as well. And Tony, like we said, Tony he's obviously kind of a nihilist in some ways. Like he doesn't care about people. I guess he would hate gay people if they were happy, like he hates everyone else, but as long as they hate themselves, he doesn't give a shit, I think. But it's a really interesting thing that he has to pretend to have this hatred, and when he tries to make a move to be more open and accepting, it's like, well, now your reputation's at stake too.
Yes, yeah. But do you think that that's more of a consequence of this a little bit different Tony going through what he's gone through this season, like his near death, and looking at second chances and every day is a gift? Or would Tony always kind of been like that?
Maybe
I
not
mean,
always. Yeah.
I mean, sorry to cut you off. I would say, I guess, even if he wasn't as accepting, money would always trump all of it. I would imagine, like just the fact that Vito's the top earner. But I'm sorry, continue with what you were gonna respond with.
Yeah, I think always had like doesn't give a shit what people really do, but I also feel like it's definitely affected by this that he is more, I don't know, he's more present in like not caring about what happens with other people and caring more about holding his grandchildren and things like that, and it's like it's really not going to affect him, and he is annoyed that Vito is gay because it's brought on all this trouble. Now I don't see how he thinks that he if he actually thinks that he can bring Vito back in, like, because he's kind of like arguing against things later and like, what? No, if I say he's coming back, he's coming back, but it's like that would never happen. But like, you don't necessarily have to kill him either. So there's a middle ground that they seem unwilling to explore throughout.
Well, and also it ties in with this, because the whole thing with Eugene, I mean, never mind the small break we took. It feels like forever ago, even though it was the first episode of this season when he had to hang himself because basically there was no way out. Because even taking out our break, just in general, with all the stuff that happens and the way that we were in Tony's coma and in the hospital for so long, it does feel like a different lifetime ago. Yeah. But it all ties in because, we have Vito, like, there's no way out. Eugene, there's no way out. And even to a lesser extent, with Tony trying to have this new outlook on life, he's looking for his own way out in a weird way as well. But I don't know. It's just like Tony said, like, life, it's going to drag you back down. Like, it's hard to, or I guess going back to what David Chase has said, it's hard to really change your life. It's all about trying to make small changes, because can you really become like a new person?
Yeah, that's a great point practically as well. I'd forgotten about poor Eugene. So maybe there's no, like, you're either one of us or you're dead. That's about that's possibly it, because hey, if you're gay, you're probably a snitch, right? So
well, and then even tying back to the Boca episode, I guess that's very similar as well, because the whole thing was that if you go down on a lady, then what else would you suck? Like, that was another thing of like, are you gay? But then the revelation was that, Tony goes down on Carmela, but don't you tell anyone, like, don't you don't you joke about that. That can't get out. Where it's like, secretly they all kind of do it, but there's these appearances that you have to keep up.
And similarly, you get a pass for whatever happens behind the bars.
Yes.
Apparently.
Yeah.
So cool. So they're unsettled anyway. They don't know what's gonna happen. We move to see Meadow.
Well, sorry to take it one more. Yeah. When they bring up his sudden weight loss, and then Polly's like, AIDS, like, it's such a just like ignorant, dumb thing to say, but it really makes me laugh.
Yeah, that's great. So Meadow is working at the law center and helping this family whose son was taken away for unclear reasons, and they won't give him bail either, just like ASAP or something. We get into the whole Muslim thing again here of there's a daughter who they didn't let her skate at the park or the skate rink or whatever, because she couldn't wear her hijab. Is that it? Yeah. She wasn't allowed to wear it for insurance reasons, they said, but clearly there's other reasons. And Meadow kind of brings that into the next scene where she's ranting about it. I feel, obviously it's something she's dealing with, so it's totally natural, but I also feel like there's a bit of Tony in there where he'll just pick up on something and then go ranting about it to everyone. So that's a family trait, I feel.
Yeah, that's a great read. And kind of in the Sopranos Sessions book, they talk about how, like, because Tony gives the old, like, I'm playing a violin, poor them, oh, poor you. You go about with pity for yourself. And they kind of tie it into, like, Tony's read on gay people could be different now too, because Vito isn't just this idea of a gay person. He's a person he knows, and it becomes like a real person to you. So that, like, obviously one of the best ways to break down discriminations is to humanize someone. And so since Meadow has like more of a personal interaction with a real thing and Tony doesn't, it's easy to do that. But then with something like Vito, you know, maybe that can kind of poke through some of his prejudices and make him see it as a real person. Because very easy to like see a headline and be like, oh, boo-hoo, these refugees. Go get me a beer. Shut up.
Yeah, and I feel like there's some sense. I don't know if someone says it, but there's a sense there that like, oh yeah, Carmela says like there must have been some reason, Meadow, like no smoke without fire, that sort of thing, which also ties in with everything going on with the Vito. Because even if you don't know, the reputation's already there, so fuck them, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And what do they say? Because there's a line. You don't relate to black people clinging to logs. Now, I was trying to figure, what does that mean? Is that just like when she's talking about people like trying to, like, when I don't know, come across the ocean or something? Like, does she literally mean clinging to logs? I think I kind of missed what they were getting at on that. I did make a note of it.
Yeah, I'm not sure actually, because they were talking about Bush, and then
Okay.
Carmela said she voted for them, and I don't know. I'm gonna try to find out right now.
Let me see.
Nope, it's not in there. I found an article about it. That's not it. Because I kind of wanted to know too, like, what does this mean? I don't understand it. Sour note on stereotyping.
Beard. Sorry, we're doing a little on the fucking show. She took an interest in social justice issues for some reason. She earned her own money and became highly educated. As much as she annoyed me, I guess maybe we'll just have to let it go.
Never. Okay, fine. I guess because now I'm getting results from future episodes, so I'm gonna give up. But
yeah, don't do that. Be careful.
Yeah. Yep. I'll stop. But I don't know. I don't understand it. So, hey, show@gmail.com. Explain this line, please.
No, it's my own fault because I made a note of that because I was gonna actually like look ahead of it before we discussed it, but I forgot until here we are. But yes, so yeah, the whole Bush thing, and it is amazing that, you know, it's a different time, but it's the same discussions. Like these things, it's just a cycle. That I don't mean that in a like cynical, like fuck everything, why bother type of way, but it's just interesting the way the discussion continues and history repeats itself.
Yes. So Tony apparently did take something from it though, despite his tiny violin playing, because next scene he goes in and sees Christopher in Satrielli's, and Christopher's just lifting a weight like a cool guy. And Tony asks if maybe those two Muslim guys, maybe you think they could be Al Qaeda's or something, and Christopher has a really interesting reaction where he's like, and like thinks about it, like, you know what, I've thought about that, and I don't think so, because like they have a dogs, and
they have a Springer Spaniel.
Yes, and one of them was very upset. So there's a cartoon of Muhammad posted, just in case you're not aware, dear listener, in Jyllands-Posten in Denmark, I guess, about the time this was coming out. And Christopher mentions that one of the guys was really upset, and he hated that the bad thing was that all the rioting would bring negative attention to Muslims, which isn't necessarily an argument against him being in Al Qaeda, as they put it. But yeah, they do have a dog, so this is another aspect of the whole, like, no, they're like human beings, so they can't be bad. Like,
yeah,
like,
exactly.
We all have to remember that pedophiles probably are really good to their pets. Like, these are things we need to consider in life. Bad people also were excited for the last season of Game of Thrones, and they were disappointed.
Yes, absolutely. Then, yeah, I guess, like I was saying, Vito's not really hiding that well because they kind of show up exactly where he is. And he's like, oh, you've been looking for me? I've been over here. Jeez, don't even worry about it. And I feel like we've seen this stuff a lot, where, especially on this show, where you have to kind of play along. but you do a smart thing where you try to get away at least.
Yeah.
Whether it be Phil that's like, oh, hey, Tony, I got to go see John real quick. Remember, he's got his ice cream and he hops in his car and he tries to drive away, or shit like that, where he's like, oh, yeah, I'll follow you. But, you know, the guys that want to beat him up and kill him can't be like, nah, you ain't going to follow us, because then it's like they show their hand. So you have to all play along and act like it's you know, everything's copacetic. But he does make a break for it. He gets away. Benny starts, they throw rocks at him, I guess. They're like, we knew it all along.
Lying piece of shit. The funny thing is that usually whenever there's one of those situations, it's about like he's been conspiring against the family, or like he owes money to someone. And in fact, here when he drives off, they're just kind of laughing because it's like, ha, I knew you were a finook. Like, because he hasn't actually done anything bad, kind of.
Yeah.
Well, he has, but mostly towards his wife. It shouldn't really concern them, but of course it does. And they see this as confirmation. This guy's like laughing his head off. And yeah. So next scene, we do have Christopher paying a guy to fix the scissors and that for the people from Naples. Pays him in coke, I guess. And this is another scene where, you know, reputation and everything is central, because Christopher, first for a goof, is like, oh, that's the captain you're talking about, don't you be careful. He's like, oh shit, I'm sorry. And then still Christopher, just for laughs, lets it slip and like, ha, you and me, you're a crackhead, but here we are. Ha.
Yeah,
we can all laugh. At least you're not a finook.
He's taking up the old Hershey Highway. But even like just this thing in general of trusting I guess in the end he doesn't trust, like, again, I would have to assume that if you're this junkie guy and you're being trusted, he's being trusted, I guess, with this information because he speaks Italian or something, and he can talk to these, you know, out of country guys that are coming in for the hit, because this is an important thing that's supposed to be tapered off from them. And I assume they'll probably have to kill this guy, right? Like once the job is done, so there's no link. But I don't know, that's all just speculating in the future. But it definitely reminds me of going back to when Junior was in the process of trying to kill Tony. I remember he was hiding in the back seat and they were talking up to some like potential hitters or whatever, and they made a crack about Tony's mom. It's like, oh, his own mother wants him whacked or something, and then Junior's like, I don't like it, what are they going to be saying about me? So it is great how it's always been a thing on the Sopranos that, you know, the way people talk and what the gossipy rumors are, you got to kind of put a stop to that. But it's hilarious how Christopher just piles in and throws in his own jokes.
Yeah, I mean, it's just a great line read for the ending as well, where the guy's like, could be a midlife crisis thing, and Christopher's like, sucking a cock? Yeah, that's very good. So does he comes home, actually, right? Or Vito comes home to gather up his belongings, mainly his money.
Yeah, there's like a babysitter there or something. He packs up some stuff. I mean, he does take a picture of his family, or his kids at least, and he kind of sees his kids while they're sleeping, and gathers up some cash to be on the road. And like, I was picking up, like, I don't know if I was just reading too much into this or not, but it just felt like there's a lot of tension. Even when he's just driving down the street eating ribs or whatever. Like, I'm like, oh, what's gonna happen? He's gonna put the ribs on there, and the sauce is gonna mess up his crankshaft. He's gonna crash his car. But nothing really big happens. He's just eating ribs, chatting on the phone, doing whatever.
Yeah, car breaks down in that. He throws out the phone out the window, right? Yeah. Interesting that it's a picture of him and his wife, I think, that he packs rather than his children.
Okay.
You'd think that, I don't know, it is interesting because it's like that's a relic of his life that he's now supposedly abandoning. Hits a fallen tree or branch and has to pull over, can't keep going, so has to go on a trek to the nearest small town. And this is where we start getting introduced to my favorite part of the episode, which is the Gilmore Girls part of the episode. Because this is Gilmore Girls, and he reminds me of Gilmore Girls, and I love it. And I don't know much about New England, but having seen it depicted now in 2 shows, I know this is where I want to retire when I'm old and gay, like
Yeah.
Vito, because it's just a fabulous town. The bed and breakfast woman, really pleasant, won't even take his money until the morning. Like, no, we'll get you sorted. I'll get your car up. She's a regular Lorelei. She is. And I mean, we'll get into the rest of it later, but it's just lovely. And of course, it's like, yeah, I think I might live free here instead of dying.
Yes, yeah, and it does harken back to like a real world version of, Kevin Finnerty in a way. Like it's the kind of the whole what if scenario. Like, well, what if I was just here? What if I was here and I forget, it's like a fake town I think they made up in New Hampshire. But yeah, there are seemingly, I mean, they never like confirm that some of the people that he sees in the town are gay, but you kind of assume that they're gay and everyone's cool with it. It's like an idealistic, sleepy little town full of nice people, much like Stars Hollow and Gilmore Girls. I don't know if any other Sopranos podcast references Gilmore Girls as much
on
as this
every
one.
episode. Yeah,
I hope people don't hate that about us. But I would tell you, it's a good show. All right, I know you're rolling your eyes, but it's a good show.
Set aside your preconceived notions. All right, it's a great show. And I should correct what I said before. There's a picture of his children that he packed as well, but it was also a picture of his wife there. So, yeah, kind of arrives, leaves his gun there, just goes to sleep on this great bed, wakes up in this kind of big, nice bed and breakfast room, and we leave him there for now. Go back to see Carmela checking out the spec house.
Yeah, her ghost house.
Yeah, ghost house. Which again, like we said the first time we were there, like the sort of plastic sheets floating in the wind, like they look like ghosts in themselves. Like leaving aside the fact that it looks totally abandoned. But yeah, it's now been basically looted, and she knows exactly who did it. And this is a great scene where she drives up to talk to her dad about this. And I swear at one point I thought her dad was like the cool one of the parents. And I didn't realize he just loves Tony and loves being a man and not taking responsibility for his actions like us men do. So yeah, they have a big fight about this.
Yeah, because it's essentially was his fault in the beginning because he used like the wrong lumber, wasn't up to code properly, and he thought that he had connections, but he's like obviously just this long retired guy who's like out of touch with like the reality of construction, and then just assumed Tony would take care of it. And now Carmela's back in yet another position where she needs Tony to do something, and it's not so much that Tony's being malicious with the whole thing where she keeps asking if he's gonna like juice some palms basically with the building inspector. It's just Tony's going through his own shit. He got shot and he's still kind of recuperating and getting back into the swing of things.
Yeah, exactly. And all this is happening, and so her mother is kind of there shouting with her hair rollers and like, "What happened to my good pan?" or whatever. She's just totally ignored. But yeah, he's just watering his driveway, which is, I guess, the thing you do.
I always wonder about that.
I've seen it a lot in television and movies. I don't know what the point is, but yeah. Maybe he's washing away leaves. I'm not sure. I have no clue, actually.
So now we got Vito at the diner. He sees a couple, or seemingly a couple. Gets to try the Johnny cakes because those are the special basically there.
Doesn't this just want to make you go on a weekend trip to New England? Like, this is a great ad.
Yeah.
Like, head into this little diner, get a personal recommendation, have a bit of a chit chat with this guy with a great mustache and great muscles too. I swear it harkens back to the previous episode where Tony's looking at everyone's muscles, and now Vito's looking at this guy's arms and everything. It's kind of the same scene basically.
Oh, for sure. He makes the call. I mean, who does he call here?
He's trying to find someone. I don't remember.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, he's actually looking up because his name's Spatafor. Like, I think he's looking up his sister or something like that. Or okay, that's right. But yeah, they can't find it. Whatever they're looking for. So he tries the Johnny cakes. Yeah, he's just kind of taking it all in. The great scenery. Then we have Silvio, I guess. Under another ruse, waiting to see if Vito comes back home. He's with Vito's wife. Supposedly he's got tickets to backstage passes to a concert or something or other. they do a quick shot of them at like a Ren fair or something. Like he looks at a picture, and now he's like, my read from it, he's looking at it in a different light now. Like, we
Yeah.
should have known.
Yeah, he's dressed up like Robin Hood or something in Men in Tights for sure. And yeah, we know it's a big deal because when he goes outside, it's Tony there, right? Yeah, Tony's there waiting for him.
Oh,
And
that's right. Yeah.
yeah.
So he's just been lurking in the car the whole time because it seems like Silvio's been in there for a little while. Like they're just hanging out.
Yeah. So and Tony basically gives the whole speech of sorry, no, Vito. I'm spacing now. It's Silvio. Third time's the charm. Silvio says, "I've been around a lot of women, and that one ain't getting dicked."
Oh, that's
in
right.
so many words. So that's his analysis.
I mean, he does own a strip club, so yeah, I guess he would know. And there's a hilarious exchange here where Tony calls Vito's phone, and like the construction guy or the guy working on the side of the road picks it up.
Yeah.
And like it's like this confusion / argument. Everyone, you got a telephone tough guy, put Vito on the phone. And he's like, hold on, let me get him for you. And like tosses it under the fucking under like the steamroller or whatever.
I guess this guy. I kind of want to see the show about this guy because he just. What's his motivation? Because he does answer. It's like, oh, hello, and then he's like talking shit to him, and then he's like, there ain't no Vito. I found this on the side of the road, and he's just like, hang on a second, and then I thought, a cell phone in that day and age, take the SIM card out, sell that shit. I guess not.
True.
You're just sort of annoyed by this guy, throw it under, and it gets run over by what is that thing called? Steam thing?
Yeah, I guess. Yeah, something like that. I mean, I my kind of read is that if Tony was just like a little bit rational, he would have at least they would have gotten like a kind of a beeline on at least the direction or where it was at or something. But Tony kind of is tough immediately. So the guy's like, I don't have to deal with this shit. But you're right. Why don't you just keep the phone and sell it?
Yes. So continuing Carmela's line in this story, we've seen her at the house, seen how she doesn't really have full control over this business that she wants to have control of, and we're gonna see how that is in sort of contrast to the body shop. And I forget her name. What's her name?
Angie.
Yes, Angie. Angie's there rushing in. She's got to go. She doesn't have time for this sitting around bullshit the wives do, because as is pointed out, she's got one foot in each camp at this point, and it's leaning more towards the guys' camp basically.
Yeah, like it's the constant reminder. I mean, this is not the first time we've seen. Actually, it's kind of gone both ways with how Carmela looks at Angie Bumpancero, Big Pussy's wife. Yeah. Initially, it was like a kick into gear when she saw her working at the grocery store. Like, oh fuck, I need a backup plan if something happens to Tony. And then it's turned into this like jealousy where because Angie has pulled herself together. And, I mean, with the help of Tony, in a weird way, indirectly because of Carmela, I think, because wasn't that like part of a thing where it came up, and then, Tony did decide to help her with the garage, but then that was a big thing where he came and like smashed in the car door and was like honking on the horn saying, don't come around my wife or something. It's in this torrid past, but now apparently she's connected, but it's always been a constant thing with Carmela. And now again, she's feeling worse about her own thing because she did have this spec house, which she did a little bit on, but I mean, Tony put up the money and then it all got fucked up, and now she has to rely on Tony again. Remember when she was doing stocks and she was doing well on that when she stole the money? Let's get back to that.
Yeah, you don't want to build right now. You maybe hold on to that land, just sell it. It's going to be worth more maybe. Unless there's some sort of financial crisis coming up. Ha ha ha, don't worry about it.
No worries.
2006. Yeah.
Yeah, been great.
So another scene with Melfi here where Tony has to start it by saying like, well, actually, I knew all along, which is what everyone's saying in this situation, which I also feel is what everyone says in real life when something similar happens. Like, I always kind of knew about that. Yeah. Everyone just has to brag about their gaydar all the time.
Well, and I mean, I know we're talking Sopranos, so it's okay to get blue, but it's not as okay to say the F word these days anymore. And I don't mean fuck, but Tony's read of "he's a fag," it's hilarious. It's so funny. I mean, come on, it's hilarious because it's such a weird way to do that. And he's like, "Come on, do I have to spell it out for you?" And he does use the line again because when Carmela, not Carmela, when Melfi asks him about the gay community or the gay thing, he goes, "I feel like they go about in pity for themselves." So he does kind of come through with that little gem, and it really doesn't make sense what he's saying, but it's just a classic Tony. I'm going to use a thing that I picked up, and I try to squeeze it into every situation now.
Yes, and I think his line read makes sense in the context that she's asking, what is the actual problem? What is the issue? And he does his little sing song, and it's like what she's saying is like that. Why is that an issue? I don't like. Why does it have to be? And so, in a different show, if that was not the question posed, and someone gives that reading, it's like, what the fuck is this show? But I mean, it's fairly clear what the show is saying about the whole issue. Unlike
for sure.
Some topics they like to stay really ambiguous on, but I mean it's very obviously showing how toxic all of this is for everyone involved, all this homophobia.
Well, it's great because I mean, not that the Noah Tenenbaum stuff, I think it was Tenenbaum's his last name, but not that really went to a ton of places, but it's just great that the show, or David Chase or the writers, they feel like they want to explore characters' prejudices. And, they spent time showing that Tony Soprano was racist and that he didn't like that his daughter was dating a half black guy. And now it's like they're kind of exploring this a bit here with these, this masculine side of the world where it's all about, we were talking the episode before this was all about image and how everything looks. And now you're getting into the reality of the situation and just how they have to deal with that, but still kind of presenting them as full characters and not just outright like caricatures of racist, prejudiced pigs. You know what I mean? Like there's a place for characters like that as well, but I feel like it's more helpful. Not that I'm saying you're humanizing and making a hateful person sympathetic, but just showing that it's still a person, and maybe that shows that there's a way to help them through whatever they're dealing with,
Yeah. And so also part of this scene, Tony gets to say, every TV show, they shove it down your throat these days, which is fun because he's on a TV show. And he references the L word, saying like that show, that's all right though. I don't mind that as much, though I am a strict Catholic. And like he's just saying all these things, like, oh, we will end up fucking dogs, like. And Melfi correctly goes like, I'm hearing a lot of ambivalence right now. Like you're just saying things.
Well, which is great too, because I guess going back pre-shooting in Coma, Carmela was the one that had the big speech about them shoving it down your throat in the media.
Right.
He was doing a thing at Meadows dinner or whatever. And then at the time, Tony was just like, yeah, salut,
That's true. Yeah, she was actually surprisingly, on that side of things. So just showing how Tony's surrounded by all of this, even though, as he admits here, he doesn't really care, but he obviously cares. Like it's very important to him that no one thinks he would do anything like that, but he doesn't care if other people do it, really, because he goes into like, well, my stint was very short, obviously, behind bars, so I definitely wouldn't. And then he's like, you think I'm lying, right? And she's like, no.
Yeah, he doesn't let it go because she brings up the prison thing, and he mentions that you get a pass for that. You're in there for 5-10 years. There's no women. And then he brings up his own. Yeah, he gets defensive or insecure about his own thing, and then he even doesn't let it go. He's like, "You thought I was lying. You thought I was lying a second ago about the prison thing." And she's like, "I've given you no indication that that I think that you're lying."
Yeah, and then we get to like, who gives a shit? Salute. Maybe it's part of his whole new outlook on life. That this is also when we get into how things drag you down, which I think is the point of the scene in the end, where like everything's just a fucking bother, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah, and I think it's kind of laying more bare that if Tony really did want to I guess live this second chance and change his life, and every day's a gift. It's, I guess, similar to looking at something like Christopher going sober or whatever. One of the steps or something you're supposed to do is you got to kind of cut out your previous friends if you hung out with crackheads and you're trying to not do crack anymore. You can't hang out with those friends anymore. So he would almost have to leave this life to fully change, because even if he's like, all right, no more murdering or something, you're still doing other things that are destroying other people's lives and being a bad person. So there's no real other way around it.
Yeah, and it's talking of things, backsliding and going back to a little bit to the way they were before. We have Tony and Carmela, and they do get a sweet scene where she's got some ointment for his scar or whatever, and he says that she was right about Junior, should have cut him out, and all of that. Very nice. But then we have the reality as well of like, you didn't talk to the building inspector or whatever. I don't know if that's in this scene, but that's sort of souring their new, more positive relationship yet again.
Yeah, I believe that is a part of the scene as well. And
Yeah.
and tying to what I was saying before, I still think it's sad that they don't it's just this idea that Junior was always going to try to kill him, and it's not that he's not really Junior anymore. But easier said than done. Easier forgive and forget, because where's Junior's second chance? Or maybe he already got it.
He did get a second chance, to be fair. So yes, we have a great scene where Meadow gets to also be the person who knew all along. Everyone gets to be the person who knew all along, even though she kind of did, even though she denied it. And yeah, she spills the beans about Finn seeing what he saw, and then Carmela pressures her into, well, now you have to tell Tony. And because I guess Meadow doesn't get what a big deal it is. I mean, she is so part of this life, but obviously not. She wouldn't think like, oh, they're going to kill Vito now because of what I said. Like, that would never enter her brain, because like, oh, it's my uncle, and who cares if he's gay? It's fine these days. And it's like, nah, Paulie doesn't think it's fine though, Meadow.
No, Paulie's not okay with it. And yeah, which, it becomes like a fun scene, because when they bring Finn in, well, I mean, it's also a fun scene when they're just kind of gossiping about it with Carmela and Rosalie, and then Meadow gets involved. But then, Tony comes down in his Tony. Like, I feel like I haven't seen this classic Tony in a while, where his hair's sticking up and he's got his robe on. It's one of my favorite Tonys. Like, if I get an action figure with all the accessories, I'd want this Tony to put on my shelf. You know what I mean?
It's one of the best Tonys. Absolutely. I would love that. So we like you said, he then brings in Finn, and we see him kind of nervous going in the back room of Satriali's. And this scene just kind of made me think about scenes in general, because it's so short, and like it obviously continues later after he's sort of told the story already. But this scene works in itself because it has a turning point, and something that took me so long to realize is that kind of the most important thing in, I guess, directing a scene or whatever, or writing it as well. But like, there's always a point where something changes from something to something else, which is a very vague way of putting it. But like in this scene, everyone's joking around about him being a dentist, and Tony's bringing in this more serious energy, and they notice how nervous Finn is, and it gets like, the mood gets more serious, and that's kind of where the scene ends, because then we're propelled into like what's going to happen next. Even in in isolation, not looking at anything else, this is still a scene that works, even though kind of nothing happens in it.
Yeah, no, that's a great read, because it's such like pleasantries, like, hey, the dentist over here, almost like kind of what Vito does every time he sees Finn, except he adds like a weird little extra layer to it of like menace. I don't know if he's trying to do that or not. And it's interesting too, because then because you're not going to stay with this scene, because we already know the story. We've seen it happen on the show. We've seen Finn tell Meadow about it. we've known about as the audience for a while. We've even then just saw Meadow tell Carmela and Rosalie. So like when it gets to that point where he's going to tell the story, it just cuts to Vito walking around in New Hampshire or whatever, like back in his like idealized world. It's funny the way they like make this like kind of montage or whatever here, because like at one point they just cut to him like sitting at a waterfall. Like,
yeah.
And I can't tell if they're just leaning into look how great everything here is, or if they're like, this is what gay guys do. They hang out at waterfalls.
I thought of
They
it
go
as like,
antiquing, you know?
he is walking around at first and he sort of looks in this antique shop, which I assume is the same one he goes into later. And then he's sort of walking along and it's everything super idyllic. Some fellow with a walking stick, like an actual stick, is like, good morning. And he's like, and then he gets to this waterfall and he has this look of distress. And I think this is part of the, I mean, he obviously looks at the license plate later and it's live free or die. And I mean, I'm getting some suicidal vibes here when he's looking at the waterfall. Not as much as in the motel room when he actually had a gun and drove there, obviously to kill himself and then didn't. I mean, I don't think he was, but it gave that message to us, the viewers. This scene has that, again, sort of the chaos of death right on the doorstep, even though he's in such a nice place, there's still that there. But yeah, it was a funny edit.
Yeah. And then we kind of cut back after he's told the story and everyone's kind of, you know, everyone is pretty serious. Paulie's pretty upset. And what they kind of shoo him out of the room for a bit because they need to discuss like the reality of the situation.
Well, the most important thing is that he finds out that he was catching, not pitching. That's when Paulie's like, and Finn's like, he's worried, and Paulie's like, believe me, you know, I have no problems from Vito. Like the guy defending him most vigorously because to him being gay is like so much worse than to most other people, I guess, in the room. So for him, it's like that accusation. It's like accusing someone of high treason. You can't go around doing that unless you have solid proof. But now that he's got solid proof, oh boy.
Yeah. So things got real. And it's interesting how they played this out because, I mean, obviously, when they just filmed that kind of gag scene, I didn't even mean to do that, but when they filmed that gag scene where Finn shows up early and Vito pokes his head up, I don't think they knew that they were going to explore it in this way. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Or what do you think?
I think I'd agree with that. I mean, they're definitely throwing something out there for them to they're throwing something for themselves to catch later on.
Yeah.
And maybe that thread wouldn't have gone anywhere, or maybe it would be this, and this is like the expanded version of it. But I feel like The Sopranos is good at just throwing shit into the air and trusting themselves to catch it later if they need to, and then otherwise they can catch some other storyline and get going with that.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, Paulie he makes a line like, well, Chris is kind of laughing, but he's fired up. Paulie makes a line of like, you know, how much more betrayal can I take? And we kind of had a different read of that line in the Sopranos session. I forget exactly what they mentioned, but I just read it as he's still reeling from the whole thing with his mother. Like I thought it was pretty clear he meant like that.
Yeah, I'm not sure what else it would be. That's what I thought too. But yeah, he's defiant even towards Tony here, where he's like, what the fuck else is there to talk about? And Tony's like, you sit down, I'm the boss, or whatever. And yeah, he says that it's got to stay within these four walls, what they found out. But like, Christopher's already tongue crackheads. Like it's out there now. And I mean, in the very next scene, we have
well, let me just say before you get to the next scene, sure. Going back to calling, I call this out every now and then because remembering watching it week to week and stuff they would use in the, you know, next time on The Sopranos, I remember specifically the lines of he's gotta go when I think it's Carlo that's like he's gotta go, and then when you hear Tony yelling and what about you, huh? You're gonna take care of his kids, you can take care of his family, And I remember just thinking like, oh man, what is going on next week? And then it never quite delivered. Like The Sopranos always delivers, but it just didn't deliver on what you thought things were going to be, the way they would cut these next time on the Sopranos promos.
Well, I bet in the next time on promo, there's dramatic music playing as well, like dun 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 dun. They're like, where he's gotta go, boom boom boom. And can you imagine this scene if it had like emotional orchestra, like bum bum and like shit like that? It would so lessen the flow of the of the conversation and the material that they're handling as well. So that would be a great way to anti-deliver on it, with just having like actual. Like something I think about a fair bit in The Sopranos, where some shows will like add a bit of music to everything. Other shows will be more selective. Like The Sopranos usually makes a very conscious choice when they're throwing in music. Like the other episode there where he does arrive at the motel room and we hear the same song that was playing in the previous episode. He's very pronounced. It's like, what is this song? What's going on? It's interesting, but they don't necessarily have dramatic music in these scenes, which is, I think, the drama equivalent of not having a laugh track, because they know they don't need it.
Yeah, absolutely. And then, the next scene, it's Phil talking to Vito's wife, which is, I guess, what, his cousin, I believe. I forget. Right. They're related somehow.
No, because she's his cousin.
That's what I mean. Yeah. Right. Like Vito's wife is related to Phil.
That's right. Yeah. And she's kind of teared up and crying over the whole thing. Of course, his estimation of Johnny Sack was greatly lessened by just seeing him crying. So, as we can imagine, he's not too happy about the whole thing. The witness has no reason to lie. He's not all gung-ho about killing Vito, but he's also like, Vito may as well be dead to him, I guess.
Yeah. And just kind of, I was still looking for him or something. I forget the specifics of what they're talking about here. But basically, just confirmation. The word's out. I guess they didn't keep it within those four walls, like Tony, I think, had said in the previous scene. And then, then we have Carmela going to the garage where she walks in on Rosalie making deals. I guess we find out she's putting money on the street. And not Rosalie. I'm sorry, Angie. She's talking to Rosalie after, and Rosalie's the one that makes the thing of like, one of us or one of them. And now she's kind of more one of them.
Yeah, good line. And good way to put the perspective on the whole thing for Carmela. So then we have Tony greeting the new captain taking over from Vito. I don't know this guy's name, but he's very excited. Sure it's
Carlo.
Right.
Sure.
So he's very excited. They have a drink, and then they get to talking about how, just so you know, Tony, like if Vito were to come back, like people wouldn't like work with him or take orders from him or want to be seen with him or whatever. And this isn't really surprising, but like Tony reacts against it after his talk with Melfi, and then afterwards Silvio is also like, you like, he's like, you don't want your reputation to be damaged too, right? I forget the actual wording, but that's basically it.
Yeah, it does kind of come down to, it's kind of just out of Tony's hands. Even though Tony is the boss and he could maybe try to force it, it wouldn't last, is kind of the thing. It would basically take down Tony as well.
Yes, because people would start withholding money. And he says, like, you know perfectly well, guys like Paulie, they never kick up the full amount, which is obviously true from when they did that big score and him and Vito were handing in the money, and they were both like, we're trying to hand in as little as possible, but keep as much as possible. But then Tony in the hospital bed even commanded so much respect that they still got it. But even Carmela was like, there was probably more there, right? Of course there was.
Yeah, and then what is it? Sylvia that says the line like, "You gonna kiss this guy on the cheeks when he comes back?" As Carlos say it, which is interesting because it's already kind of like a homoerotic thing enough that they do. Like other cultures would like look down upon that. Never mind, that's just a regular thing. But now it's like, ooh, not a fanook. So yeah, it's a great use of this thread because it puts Tony in a very interesting spot, and it also just is a good excuse to kind of really explore some interesting things with all of these characters in general. And then I think it goes back to Meadow and Finn here. And I love the way they have Meadow and her like. Well, first we see her just at like one of her new offices. She's kind of studying to be a lawyer, and she's doing, kind of the grunt work. She's got to dig through these files and find whatever. And then one of the lawyers makes a crack like, "Oh, Tony Soprano's daughter." And then we see her with Finn. And, we always see the hints of this, like Meadow's very rebellious against her life, but she's Tony and Carmela when it comes down to it, because she still makes the same excuses and she still puts a blind eye to the reality of the situation.
Yeah, she's learning about all these big investment, fuckers, and everyone's sort of earning money without, like, just out of thin air, and fucking people over on a massive enough scale that they're probably going to get a bailout in 2 or 3 years anyway, so they'll probably be fine while everyone else is totally fucked. And there's some truth to that as well. But also, yeah, she doesn't want to see the reality of what she's in. Doesn't want to worry too much about that. But yeah, I guess this part of this thread is also to show the contrast between the law center and like this internship she has at this law firm, where it's like huge boxes of files and things that instead of like doing a personal sort of talk with some family, and now it's like, give me this and this file because you're one of 100 people working on this case or whatever, and we're getting paid millions of dollars to do this, so let's get it done.
And I know we kind of jumped. There's a quick scene with Tony in the pool working his lats, and then Carmela's frustrated because he still hasn't talked to the building inspector. She's still dealing with their spec house. But going back to like the rationale with Meadow and white collar crime, I think we've heard Carmela use like the exact same excuse before. I forget if it was with Melfi or someone else, when she's like, my husband, there's a lot more worse criminals out there than my husband. So there's just that through line there. It's easy to be on the outside and not get to enjoy this great house and this great pool and a pool house theater and all, like being able to go to my flashy school and be like, this is terrible, we're fucking people over. It's like, yeah, but look at this great life I have. I can kind of deal with a few people getting fucked over. At least I'm not fucking over like thousands of people.
Yeah, and she gets into like that it was horrible that that Tony had to take his shoes off and all that. It was just an embarrassment. And he says the guy was lucky to even get out to go to the wedding. And then she starts, according to him, picking a fight, talking about, like, I guess his parents and jokes about, Italian cheeses and smelly feet, and like being like him not accepting being Italian or whatever. And she and then he gets into like, what do you think is going to happen to Vito just for being gay? Like, what do you think of these people you run around with? And they're also high during all this.
Yeah, and I guess so. What is Meadow? They're staying in the guest house now, I suppose, or something. Or I mean, she's around a lot more. I guess now she's doing an internship. I don't know. It's hard to read. The Soprano Session book does point out that it's an interesting turn of the tide in the relationship here, because if you remember, like one of the big arguments that kind of prompted their engagement was the Vito thing, and he proposed to her to get out of an argument, but also to like kind of squash the Vito thing. But now that Vito is basically on his way out, if not out, like it is this weird, like it takes a part of their bond away in an interesting way. So yeah, I guess that is like another thing to kind of point out with their relationship.
Well, interestingly, before he was more scared of like what Vito would do to him, and now he's more emphasizing what they're going to do to Vito.
Yeah.
Because of what he said. But I guess that's fair enough, given that like, oh, if you hadn't spilled the beans on this, then I wouldn't have been brought in there, and I wouldn't have to say this. And then maybe a guy who hasn't done anything wrong besides all the crime and being gay, maybe he would have been fine. But then he also threatened me earlier, so when you're high, that's a lot to deal with.
Yeah, it's a lot to especially when you're just a young up and coming dentist.
Yes, exactly. So I guess this is the final scene here coming up with Vito going into the antique shop, And yeah, he picks up a vase or something or a jug, and the guy's like, "Huh, you're a natural. That's the most expensive thing in here." And I'm like, "That's from Crimes. He learned that from Crimes."
Or I read it as he learned it because he's gay. And that's what gay
Right.
people know. Because again, like I'm kind of, even though I give the Sopranos writers obviously all the credit in the world, but I'm almost tying this into how I was talking about like their take on like hip hop and rappers and stuff previously.
Yeah.
Like that, maybe I'm not giving them enough credit because that's why I was like, oh yeah, he's sitting by a waterfall because he's a gay guy. Oh, he can go antiquing and pick out the great piece because he's a gay guy. Like that's what I'm picking up, that like the subtext they're trying to give me, and maybe I'm not giving them the credit they deserve.
Well, similarly, I think it's fairly clear that the two men who come into the diner are, meant to be gay. But I feel like the show is also kind of saying that this antique shop guy, he's probably gay, and then like the guy who runs the diner, he's maybe gay too. And it's kind of doing it in not the most subtle way, but then maybe I'm the bad guy. It's hard to say.
Yeah, I mean, I guess we'll see, because I mean he's not dead yet, so I assume we're going to be back in New Hampshire, unless this is the last we see of Vito, and he just lives the rest of his days out there running this antique store. Because
I mean,
as it cut to black, he's like, "You're hired. You're an asshole. You're hired."
Yeah, I mean, I would kind of love that, and I would kind of want to see that show, and maybe the guy working on the road, he could have a bit part. He could be one of the wacky characters in the small town. But then that's the kind of show I enjoy watching besides The Sopranos. As we've learned from Junior, second chance never really pays off or pans out the way you'd think. So I think Vito is going to end up dead, unfortunately, and he's just going to get this taste of what he should have had or could have had out of life first, and maybe he will end up as a local in this town and everyone kind of knows his name, but then eventually he's going to end up dead. So sorry, Vito, you probably got to go, not because of being gay, but because of the whole running away thing and knowing too much. And you know what, maybe you're not going to turn state's evidence, but like, what if you do? Got to get you out of there, Vito. Sorry.
Yeah, there's not many ways out of this life. That's part of joining the mafia.
Yeah, and this is exactly the same when you start listening to Cut to Black.
Yep.
The only way out is when you leave a review. Otherwise, you all get hunted down and shot at the end of season 6. So I'm afraid to break it to you, you will have to leave a review in order to avoid that old, what is it they say? The old metal handshake. Instead of a golden handshake, you get a metal handshake. There's a gun in the hand. I don't know. We're still working on the
Concrete
metaphor.
shoes. Because they used to
Exactly.
put you in concrete shoes and throw you in like the bottom of the ocean or whatever.
Yeah, and that might happen to you if you're not careful. And how are you careful? You leave a review on Apple
Yes.
Podcasts or wherever you get your podcasts. You can also check out showswhatyouknow.com for our other shows. We got our new one, Blank Meets Blank, out there. We're also maybe putting out some other new shows kind of soon. Keep an eye on it. Of course, there's also jimandthem.com for Jim's other podcasts, and awesomepedia.org for things I make. So much content, so little time.
Yes, yeah. And I mean, with all that content, there's only one thing left to say.
Oh, what's that, Jim?
Cut to black. That worked. It worked that time.